The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Well, welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I am Rick Welch. And how about across the room? Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
Hello.
Charlton R. Carter III.
Woohoo.
Jerry the Annihilator Lewis.
Hello.
And straight out of Compton, Ralph Hicks.
Represent.
So we are here, Berean Bible Church in Virginia Beach again. And we have somebody that I just recently met just a little while ago. And I've gotten to know your husband a little bit. So this is Denise Sullivan. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Mike has been on the show a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. We've become some, friends. We've been talking a lot. And so I asked if I could have you on the show and you share your testimony.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right into this, shall we? What is Mike's social security number?
Well, I know the last 4 digits, but I can't share that.
Technically, that's all I need, so no.
Exactly.
Yeah, really.
I ask every guest that my very first question is, can you tell me your earliest memory of when you heard the name Jesus Christ?
Probably 7 years old. My dad's a preacher, minister of the Church of Christ.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up in Edenton, North Carolina, just literally down the road from here.
Oh.
And that's where they still live.
Really? Now, is he still preaching?
Off and on.
Yeah. So you were raised in a preacher's home?
Yes.
All right. So you heard the name at the age of 7.
That's when I remember.
That's when you remember.
Specifically because we moved to Edenton and my dad took over that congregation, that church. And that was very vivid memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how about your salvation experience?
I always knew God. I always knew his existence from very early on. You hear that someone is a preacher's kid and all sorts of things kind of come into your head.
Yeah.
My childhood was not an easygoing childhood. It was very tumultuous. Very.
Really?
Yeah, very. My sister, let's see, I am 6 years older than my closest sister. I have a twin brother. Then we have a sister that's 6 years younger, and then a sister that's 9 years younger. And my sister that's 6 years younger than I am, who I'm relatively close to at this point, she's like, yeah, it was bad, Denise. It was bad.
Really?
That's not the word she uses. It's the word I'm using.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It was bad. It was not an easy childhood at all. No.
Yeah.
But I always knew God was there. He was the one constant knowing, even before I know I was a Christian and a child of his, I knew he was there. I knew that everything was going to be okay because I knew he was there. I remember when things would be rough inside the house, and I remember one very vivid memory is we grew up with fields all around our house. We grew up in the country and fields all around our house. And I remember very distinctly being so upset and not having any idea what in the world I had done wrong to deserve everything that happened. And going outside, and they were plowing the fields. They were turning up peanuts as it was harvest, and they were turning over the fields to turn up the peanuts, and smelling the fresh dirt and seeing the clear blue Carolina sky, and just knowing it's all good. God's there.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming now you don't have to go into like super deep detail if you don't want to, but there was something that's going on inside your family that's really bad. Is that something you'd rather not share?
Well, Dad didn't know a lot of what was going on inside the house with Mom. But Mom was very, very verbally and physically abusive with all four of us, but especially the two of us because we were so much older, my brother and myself. And we carried a lot of the physical abuse, protected my sisters quite a bit from that. The verbal abuse carried on after my brother and I left. But, that was...
Was this in relationship like to your faith? She's a pastor's wife, right? So is she doing this to try to control you, to make you like put on a facade or look like something that you're not? Or
I think it was more frustration and disappointment. The church that my dad took over in Edenton was a very unique church in many respects. When we got there, probably within a year after my dad took over being the minister of the church, the congregation cut in half. Half of the members just left. The ones that were left were all Black. So you have an all-white minister's family with an all-Black church, most of whom were women and children. Very, very poor. So my dad for years, and I didn't realize this for a very long time, but my dad for years gave up his salary to keep the doors open, to keep the heat on, to keep the water going. And my mother was tasked with the responsibility of being the main breadwinner. That is not a position I think she ever saw herself in or ever wanted to be in.
And also the primary caregiver?
Yeah, because my dad most of the time was over in the office, over in the church building office studying. So he had no idea what we kids did.
oh wow,
No clue.
yeah. So, in regard to your salvation experience, you said you did this happen like at your dad's church, or was this in your adult life, or when?
When I was finally saved?
Yes.
Okay, so I remember distinctly, and my brother and I had the conversation at the same time. We were talking, and we were probably on a road trip somewhere because my dad's very fervent belief was if there was a Church of Christ within driving distance that was having a gospel meeting or an area-wide fellowship that you went. So we were constantly going places. But I remember, I think it was in the car, and we were talking, and my brother was like, man, Dad's been talking a lot lately about sin. And he was like, do we sin? And I said, yeah, I'm hearing that, and I'm recognizing that there are some things that we do that we shouldn't be doing. And God says that that's sin.
How old were you at this time?
We were 12.
12, okay.
We were 12. And I very distinctly remember having that conversation.
And you and your twin brother are having this at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. My brother and I also had a couple of dreams.
Same
at the
dreams?
same time, same dream.
Oh, wow.
And we could fill each other in. That was really wild.
That is crazy.
But yeah, we had that conversation, and we both decided, because we're Church of Christ, we need to be baptized. Like we understand that we're sinners. We understand that we need the blood of Christ. So we were baptized. It wasn't until much later, because I was very indoctrinated with the baptism and the need for water salvation. It wasn't until much later as an adult, actually moving in North Carolina after my first husband and I were in North Carolina, that I started going, what about this water baptism? That wasn't until much, much later.
Right.
Yeah.
But you believe that your experience happened at that age at 12.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm very similar. I had
Yeah.
a 12. I was 10 years old, and living in an atheist household, it was a very weird feeling.
Oh, I
but
can
that was the
imagine.
moment for me. I can go back. Yeah, I didn't have it all together, but that was that
Right.
moment. So I know where you're at. I
Right.
totally get that.
Yeah.
So take us from there to the present. Like, walk us through your life. I'm really curious how you got to where you are. I know that you're a traveling nurse, and I definitely want to ask you about some of that.
Okay.
But take us from 12 to the present to the best of your ability.
Oh, from 12, I mean, it was really survival in the house, trying to walk that fine line of trying to read my mom's mind, what it is she wanted, what it is she expected. I took a lot of blame and things that I shouldn't have, that were never my fault, to prevent my sisters from really suffering a lot of what my brother and I suffered. So it was survival. I was not the best student in high school. But before we even got to high school, my parents pulled us out of school, home taught us for 7th and 8th grade. So it was those were not real fun years.
No, you had to stay home all the time.
You're saturated.
Yeah,
Yes. You're completely enclosed and saturated for 2 years without any kind of break
Yeah, that's
from the environment.
Yeah.
So that was pushing through and just pushing through. And then all of a sudden being thrust into high school with no friends, no contact, in a community. If you know anything about Edenton, it is a very old town with very old money,
Yeah.
with very old established families. And
So you were well liked and everything went perfect when you came in.
100%. No.
So you got thrust into that, and so now your life. So you're coming of age. All these things are
Yeah.
happening. Plus, you have to deal with all this. So
Right.
Yeah.
Coming of age, all of this stuff happening. I was sexually assaulted in high school, not knowing what to do, where to go, where to turn, because I'm sure it was going to be my fault, just the way everything happened at home. So it was a very tumultuous high school experience.
Can I say something? I've had a lot of these testimonies, and you would be shocked at how many people actually say that this has happened to them. Sexual assault. It's so, like we say 1 in 3, man. I think it's worse. I think it's 1 out of 2.
1 in 3 is pretty damn bad.
I'm telling you right now, that was bad. So anyway, I just want you to know you're not alone. A lot of people you're looking at, they're dealing with the same thing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you're in this tumultuous situation. You've had this assault. You're trying to figure it out. You don't want to. People are going to blame you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I act out. I was very promiscuous in high school. Just totally acted out.
Yeah.
Never drank, never smoked, never went that end, but very, very promiscuous.
So it
in high
opens
school.
up because it opens you up.
Sure.
You don't really realize it.
Right.
It's happening subconsciously, and so that's
Right.
the creatures that we are. So there you are.
Right.
And so
And
now you think a lot of yourself now, right? No, like at that time, right?
Right.
You're feeling is what you're doing.
Right. And so my dad stopped preaching in Edenton. And we had actually started for a few years going to Williamston, North Carolina. And there was a very teeny tiny little church in Williamston, North Carolina. And my dad took over. He didn't take over preaching. He had finally gone back. His original degree from Lamar University, which is where my mom got her degree from, was in blood bank, in the lab, in the hospital. So both mom and dad have a 4-year degree in that. And dad quit that. He went to preaching school in Dallas, Texas, and became a preacher. And that's how we ended up in North Carolina. We actually started here in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
At Norfolk
Just right up the street.
Church of Christ. And that's where he did some mentoring and preceptorship and then got the job in Edenton. So he stopped that because just needed, with 2 kids going to college, needed more of an income. Then obviously that teeny tiny church in Edenton was going to give mom and dad. So we went to Williamston. Dad went back into the lab work in the hospital. And that's where I met my first husband and got to know his family. And they actually still live in Williamston as well. But before I got married, it was always a given that we were going to be going to a Church of Christ school for college. So we went to David Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee. And that's where my brother got his 4-year degree and then moved on from there. And I got my certificate in marriage because I didn't finish.
Oh, okay.
Now, did you say a Christian all this time?
Always a believer. Would I say that I was faithful? Once you're a Christian, you're always a Christian. Was I always faithful and closely connected with God? No.
Oh, the only reason I ask is we've been through a lot of these, and I've been through a lot of them when people have had something happen to them. And I know some people now that are young that are dealing with this. When this happens to them, a lot of times they turn away from God or say, I don't believe, or what. So is that something that ever happened to you, or do you stayed faithful the whole time?
No, always stayed faithful. Did not stay very connected to God.
How is it that you were able, if you don't mind me asking, how is it you're able to, in the midst of all of that, because I know several young people that have said, if God let this happen to me, then I'm not going to believe in him, or I don't care, or he doesn't care about me. How were you able to reconcile and
I've always
work through
asked. I've always asked myself that, and the grace of God. That is the only thing that I know. I never blamed God. I never saw anything as God's fault. I was always very well aware that we as humans make choices. Even as a child, I knew that we made choices. And even as a child, I knew that I made, at times, deliberate choices that got myself in trouble. So I can't blame God for that. And if I make choices that are bad, then other people make choices that are bad. And it's not God's fault. Mm-hmm. That's something I've always been aware of, if not had the ability to express.
Sure. So now at this point you're still in Williamston. You get married.
Well, we're at Lipscomb. I come back. We get married. Head off to Memphis so that my husband can finish optometry school in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't like that city.
It's a little dirty.
It's a little dirty.
It earned its rep.
And then we come back to Williamston.
Graceland's there, man. I like Graceland. You ever been there?
No.
It's nice. It's fun.
Does that make it?
Because
After I saw someone being body slammed by people in the mall, I was like, I'm done. But no, we came back to Williamston, tried to make a business work in Williamston. It didn't. So somehow we ended up in Western North Carolina.
Not from where we are.
So we
by
ended
business,
up,
do you mean like an optometry?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He tried to. Oh, really?
Yeah. He didn't try to. My ex-husband didn't try to start his own business at that time, but given the debt that he was in coming out of school, and the salary that he was making in one of the box lens crafters kind of things, it wasn't paying.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you remain in the Church of Christ at this point?
Yeah.
Throughout this entire point?
Yes. We were always Church of Christ. That was just really indoctrinated and ingrained at that time. Like there was no thought of any other.
Yeah.
Of looking outside of that.
So you've looked outside of that.
Oh, yeah.
So take me on that journey. I want to know, so take me from that being indoctrinated,
Okay.
having all of that, to where you are today.
Okay. So we got to Silva in Sullivan, North Carolina, up there in the mountains.
Yeah. Pretty little town. I love it.
Pretty little town, yes. And I got involved in a women's Bible study, community Bible study in Silva pretty early on, because all of my kids, I think Abby, my oldest, who's 23, she was 3 months when we moved. She was
wow.
about 3 months old when we moved and got to Silva. So very early on, got involved in a women's Bible study and met a particular friend. We are since estranged, but for many years, this particular friend, we were very, very close. And she was like, have you thought about, salvation? Have you thought about grace? Like,
And how old are you at this point?
how old am I?
Yeah. When they're asking-
25.
Okay, so you've been since 7. You talked about this moment since 7, and you're here at 25. You've been Church of Christ your whole life, and this person's looking at you and saying, "Have you thought about grace and
Have
salvation?"
you thought about grace?
Yeah,
It was like, why does Church of Christ believe this? And really challenging me, really challenging. And I had no answers except for the pat answers that Church of Christ gives.
yeah,
I was like, I hadn't really thought about it. My faith really wasn't that deep, other than a very solid knowledge that God is there, that I am a child of His. Beyond that, it really wasn't that deep. And so when she challenged me, other than the pat answers that Church of Christ always tends to give, which they say that they don't,
yeah,
but they do.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think they all do.
yeah, well, they all do.
I didn't have anything. And so I sat very quietly and listened in this women's Bible study, just to different experiences and other people's testimonies through their life and their hardships and things like that. I wouldn't say that this women's Bible study went a whole lot deeper. I mean, Beth Moore only gets so deep.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Joyce Meyer and Beth Moore only get so deep.
Right.
Yeah.
And for those of you that hear a bunch of ruckus in the background, we're setting up lunch here at the church, so I apologize, but just fight through it. Fight through it.
But I really started, that was when my journey into God's grace and the role of baptism really started. I started questioning, and we also had one study where it sort of opened my mind up, and I had no idea at the time because I'm like 25, 26, maybe 27 at the time because I'd
Newborn
been going
baby.
to it for a few years. One more baby,
Yeah, well, yeah, yep.
may have been number 3 at that time.
Yeah.
We started talking about Daniel and the prophecies in Daniel. And it started questioning some things that I had always questioned as a child, but just sort of like brushed off,
Yeah.
Just started opening my mind up more to this is not what everyone believes.
Yeah.
There's more to grace than what I've been taught. There's more to grace than what Church of Christ offers.
Yeah, when we sat with Don Preston and listened to that, because he was talking about his father, was in Church of Christ, and
Yeah.
he said his father was odd because he taught grace, and I was like, what? Like, because I didn't know, and I guess his church at the time would teach that you could lose your salvation, which is something that I don't believe. But was your sect they believe they could lose?
Oh,
their
yes, very much so. You can definitely lose it.
How did that make you feel whenever you start hearing these other verses and it's like, oh, by the way, His grace is sufficient for you? Was that, I mean, you had the moment, right? Like we all do, like, wait, what?
I was like, oh, okay. And still trying to reconcile Church of Christ, like, okay, but I can believe this, and I can believe this for myself, but I
Sure.
can still sit in here and fellowship. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right, of course.
Yeah. But very much becoming very aware that His grace is sufficient, and you don't necessarily have to be dunked. And what is that? And how is that analogy in with circumcision? And isn't that a work? And all of these works, faith, and all of this stuff starts churning in your head. And my husband, my still husband at that time, has no answers because he's just like, you just need to quit questioning. You know, our
Yeah, stop
parents
learning.
stop learning. Like
Don't read your
whatever
Bible no
my
more.
dad believed, whatever my dad believes and your dad believes, they wouldn't lie to us on purpose. So you just need to stop.
Do you guys remember that? Whenever we did the Preston thing, you remember what the elders told him?
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't want the people to ask questions. We need you to stop.
That's not the only time we've heard that.
That's odd,
No.
isn't it?
It seems to be repetitive a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. Stop questioning.
Stop reading
Just
the
go
Bible.
with what you've
reading
been
the
told
Bible.
and
Stop
move on.
questioning.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
And
think.
then at the same time, my marriage is falling apart.
Sure. You're asking too many questions.
Well, it's also falling apart because I'm becoming aware that something is very wrong in our marriage. And it takes a very long time for me to understand that, oh, we have a pornography issue.
Oh, okay.
So my marriage is falling apart. Pornography is a huge role and a huge factor in that. I'm also starting to question, what I've been taught and raised to believe. And I don't really have a lot of good places to go because it's still Church of Christ.
Yeah.
And you just don't divorce and remarry. You just don't.
Right. Divorce and remarriage in the church. Well, I don't think it's good in any church, I don't think, right? But especially in the Church of Christ.
Especially in the Church of Christ. Right.
Yeah. So here you are now. You have this marriage that's falling apart. It's definitely falling apart.
Yes.
You have 4 children.
4 children at this point.
So now you're a single mom.
Yes.
You have 4 kids.
Yes.
And so your parents are incredibly happy.
Awesome. Yes. Just
Obviously not. So
thrilled. Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. So now you're learning a lot of these things, you're coming out, you're having these studies, then you find out all this bad stuff in your marriage, and then now you're trying to bring yourself and your children into something better. But you're not getting a whole lot of support, right?
No. The church gave, also, I guess at this point, it's probably important to mention that by this time, this was the second time that we had gotten a foreclosure notice on our house that I had no idea was coming.
You
Yeah.
didn't know.
No clue. Second time.
Wow.
First time the sheriff pulls up into my driveway, hands me a foreclosure notice that I have no idea is coming. No clue.
So you're losing your home.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got these kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the Church of Christ, when I finally say, and I'm the one that finally said, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done with having no idea what's going on in my marriage. I'm done with having the rug pulled out from underneath my feet. I'm done with not knowing what's going on privately with my husband. Like, I have no idea. I end it. The church gives me and the kids a place to live. It's not very nice, but it's something I can afford. And I have just graduated nursing school.
Okay.
So I got a 2-year degree in nursing, knowing I could see where the road was going.
Yeah.
I had to do something that was going to support me and my kids. So I got a 2-year degree from the local community college, which happened to have an excellent program at that time. I was very fortunate.
Was that in Silva too?
It was
Southwestern?
Southwestern.
Hey,
And
they have a great TV and radio broadcasting at Southwestern. I almost went to that. I really wanted to, but I didn't.
But that was a door that God opened, and I could see that very, very clearly. I tried nutrition at Western. I tried a lot of different other things. I was very active at the gym at that time. They wanted me to go and get all kinds of certifications and start training there, and all of those doors shut. But nursing opened, and God opened those doors and walked me through very easily into the nursing program.
Yeah.
And I have had a wonderful career in that for the last 10 years. That was definitely, looking back, you can see God open every single door and shut everything else in terms of a career. But I had just graduated, so I was working night shift at that time, so I could be home during the day with the kids and be available to them and still earn and make a living at night.
Sure.
And yeah.
So when did that stud Mike Sullivan come into your life?
So I had met Mike actually a few years earlier. My oldest daughter, Abby, and his youngest daughter, Rachel, were in dance class together. And so I met Mike when our daughters were taking dance. And we had a couple of conversations. We had a few conversations.
It wasn't about preterism, was it?
As a matter of fact, a few things came
Oh
up.
my gosh! Right off the bat.
Yeah. Right away.
Yeah, because he's so shy about it.
Yeah.
But talk about God closing doors and opening
Right.
doors. And he sort of brought to light other questions that I had always had, in terms of the end of the world and what does that, and
What was it you said to me earlier about the flood? Oh, when you said you were little, it was one of those questions.
When I was even when I was little, in all of the little classes that you go to,
Yeah.
and talk about, okay, well, God gave us the rainbow, and that means that he would never destroy the world with water again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that means he's going to burn it up? Like,
fire, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So even as a kid, I always had those questions.
Mm-hmm.
There were questions that I still always had. And so you combine a lot of things, my marriage falling apart. One of the things that's sort of ingrained in you, or at least it was ingrained in me as Church of Christ, and maybe it's unique to me, but I was always taught that if you believe A and you do B, C should be the result.
Sure.
And that was not what happened at all. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? Everything is just falling apart. So all of these questions and this upheaval. And after my husband and after I finally separated, I spent 6 months by myself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't communicate really with anybody. I just immersed myself with God and let myself be alone with God. One thing I had never done, because I am a twin, I've never been alone. Never liked to be alone.
Even from the very beginning, in the
From-
womb.
Exactly.
You didn't even get womb in the room.
Yes, exactly. I never wanted
There's
to be
no
alone.
room in the inn.
No room in the womb.
I never wanted to be alone.
Yeah.
Hated being alone. And I realized that if I'm going to be good for anybody else, I have to be good with me and God first.
Yeah.
I have to be okay with just me and God. And I have to be whole in and of myself before I can be good for anybody else. So I spent 6 months and I just prayed, okay, Lord, I don't know what doors you're going to open. But whoever you bring into my life, it's going to be up to you because I am not going to go out of my way to look for anybody. Mm-hmm. And that's when Mike showed up again.
Yeah. That's awesome. So tell me where you are now. How are things going? So your family are still involved in the Church of Christ?
Oh, yes.
And so when
I say family,
yeah, only share what you want to share.
my mom and dad.
Yeah, okay.
Both my sisters are married. They have families of their own. Neither one really attend church at this point. My brother went from Lipscomb. He got his master's at Virginia Tech and then got his PhD from Notre Dame. And he is a professor at David Lipscomb University. He still does go to church. As far as what his actual beliefs are, they probably mirror, I would say, my mom and dad's.
Okay.
Yeah, he probably doesn't do a whole lot of questioning. And any kind of interaction, what little bit he would have, like, say, with Mike on Facebook about any of this, Mike could shut him down very, very easily.
Right.
So it's just like hands off at this point.
Mike's done that to me like 5 times. I mean it out of love, Mike. It's all good. It's all good. That's his MO. That's right. But I have to tell you though, he did back it up. So when he shuts you down, he actually backs it up.
does.
He's not just
Yes,
shutting you
he
down
does.
because he feels like it. Even though I think he is, but he's not.
But yeah, as far as, I still talk to my mom. My dad is very hard of hearing, so talking to him over the phone is a feat. But I still talk to my parents. It's been several years since I've seen my parents.
Yeah.
And at this point, I am not welcome
Yeah.
to spend the night with my parents at their house anymore.
Has your mom ever found any sort of center or calm or peace for herself, or is she?
She seems to be much more calm, especially with all of us out of the house, with the stress of that out of the house, with retirement, with more of an income, I would say, that's much more steady for her.
So maybe not, but things are easier.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. But
It's
things
hard
are
to
easier.
say. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because if you challenge
She gave a look.
Yeah. If you challenge anything, it's still going to come out.
Okay. So that sounds kind of like a no. It sounds
Still
like
gonna come out.
like times are easier, but
As long as you don't challenge.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd you like that mic work she was doing there, buddy?
Oh yeah,
she's
It's
yeah, she's
A
got
plus.
You're doing good over there.
Absolutely.
So would you say your separation from your parents, because I can definitely note with that, is that more of the theology separation, or is it the other things of the turmoil from the childhood?
Definitely the theology.
Would it?
Definitely the theology. I think one of the things that grace and understanding grace and truly accepting it, it has allowed me to really put a lot of that down. I don't hold it against my mom. I know how my mom was raised. So if I thought my childhood was bad, I know what hers was like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know the pressure she was under being a preacher's wife with the expectations and always having to be there. Like I remember 2:00 in the morning, people beating on my parents' doors because they needed someone to put them up in a hotel. They needed someone to give them food, to get them something to eat. I remember, and my dad was everything. My dad was, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, prison ministry, nursing home ministry. My dad did it all. He carried it all for many, many years until the 2 or 3 men of the church were strong enough, per my dad, in their faith to be able to carry some of the burden. And so that put a lot of pressure on my mom. Like when we would have dinner on the grounds, my mom made 90% of the food. So we're trucking it all over. Our house was right across the street and we're carrying it all over.
Yeah.
I know the burden that was put on them. And unfortunately, they just don't want to have a conversation that challenges any of their views. And so at this point, not only am I divorced and remarried, but I am Grace. Interesting side note, my step-grandfather was Samuel Lewis Johnson from Dallas Theological Seminary.
Oh boy.
So the fights. But he was a 5-point Calvinist. And so the fights between my step-grandfather and my grandmother and my dad were quite loud. I remember them.
Yeah.
I remember them. But I'm a 5-point Calvinist at this point, and I'm also a full preterist. And so I am.
Yeah, David Curtis said amen in the back there. Yeah.
So, I am definitely a heretic on all accounts.
Yeah. Well, I will convert you all to Welchianism eventually. No, I'm just kidding. So now you and Mike are married. So you have a daughter.
We do. We have a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, whenever Mike, were you guys together when Mike was writing his books?
Not the first one.
Not the first
no,
one.
but I very much so with the second one.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys kind of like talk about it and work together.
Yes, we did. Yes, and we did a lot of research, especially when he did the conference where he presented Islam versus Jewish Zionism versus Christian Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of that research together.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good.
Speaking of Mike's books, when did you write Preterism and Picking Up Women? What year did you print that one?
That's so funny.
Because can I? Hey, I want an autographed copy, please.
Dude. Hold on. You got to get on the
Yeah,
mic.
you got to get on mic.
Get on that mic right there, Mike.
You can speak to that one right there.
Mike on the mic.
Mike on the mic.
Yeah, that one's open.
We started talking, and we started talking about Nero in Revelation 666.
Oh, what a pickup
she had
line.
She was like, that dude is so hot.
He's a stud.
He's a beast.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing you're handsome.
Yes.
He's a beast.
But that was a good starter, and she was interested. And
Yeah.
Hey,
Try that at your local pub, folks.
bring up Nero.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but you got to look at this guy with his bulging arms and
I
chest
know.
muscles and
I
everything
was
too.
just saying that's a
and
good
that,
thing.
and
It's a
that
good thing
big
you're
smile.
handsome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're handsome. No.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, Denise Sullivan. Actually, can I call you D-Nice?
You may.
Good. No, I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing with
thank
us.
you.
It means a lot. Ralph, Cherry, Charlton,
Yeah.
Andy.
Represent.
Appreciate you guys being down here.
Absolutely.
Berean Bible
Thank
Church.
you.
Thank you guys
Thank you.
all. We will talk to you again next time
After we eat this food.
after we eat this food. See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, all you Burrows of Berea listeners. I have been getting questioned on how you can help give support to the podcast, which is crazy, Andy. People actually want to give us money. Isn't that neat?
I was going to say I don't understand it because I thought that might be funny, but I do understand it and genuinely appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's what we want to do. Okay. First of all, we're going to tell you how you can help us if you want, but I also want to tell you exactly where the money's going. None of this money is going to be used actually to make any content. We're not going to do that. I'm going to continue to do that. We're just going to keep making content. But what we wanted to do was something weird. We want to put up billboards around the country. We want to have these donkey faces everywhere. Not our faces, but our donkey faces put up everywhere to try to get people to come to listen to the podcast. One of the things that I've been hearing from some of the positive stuff has to do with that we're lighthearted and we're reading the scriptures and we get along, and that's important. It's something that we all need to be able to do. We ought to be able to just read a book and talk about it and not feel like we're going to slaughter each other at the end of the day, right? So here's all you have to do. If you'll go to www.patreon.com, that's patreon.com/The Burrows of Berea. And it'll take you to our Patreon page. And you will see we've got like 10, 11, 12, people that give monthly. And each one of those, there are different levels. You can pay $3 and you're a mini burrow. You can be a Brer warrior, and that gives $10 or something like that, and it goes all the way up to like $20. But anybody that wants to give, if you would go to Patreon and do it there, all that money that's going to be accruing there, we're going to be using to put billboards around the country. And so as soon as the first billboard gets up, I'm going to send pictures and show you that they're up. And hopefully we can just get people to come and listen to the show. My favorite idea that I have is on a place that I sat for 5 hours, which is Interstate 5 in Los Angeles. It was the worst.
God, how much is a billboard there?
I don't know.
Because the traffic.
Exactly.
You know,
there's
people would see it.
so much traffic. Yeah. And they're going to be like, what is this all about, all these donkeys, So help us out. So again, guys, that's what it's for. If you go to www.patreon.com/The Burrows of Berea, pick a level, help us out. We will be putting out notes. I try to put out some notes, quite often. You can go to burrowsofberea.com and you can sign up for our newsletter, and we'll keep you guys updated as we accrue. Once we get to that level, it's probably $5,000 for a week or maybe $20,000 for a month in LA. I don't know, whatever it is, but I want to see that happen one day. So guys, help us out. Tell other people about us. Share anytime you can. Listen. Give us feedback. And we love you guys. It's been so much fun. We look forward to another year.
Yeah, thank you. It is really fun.
Yeah, very much so. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.